Okay, so under the time clock setup, there are about 5 different settings here that are going to have an impact on how your time clock works. So I'm going to open up Setup. I'm going to go all the way down to the bottom for the first setting, and under Workstation Settings, there is the ability to enable or disable this computer to allow employees to use it as a clock in, clock out. The reason for this, an example, is if I have a computer back in the office or on the service counter where I don't want my people coming up to all the time to use their clock in, clock out, I can simply disable it, and that the time clock will now not be available on this computer. Assuming most everybody remembers that workstation setting means that dedicated computer. So if you have 3, 4, 5 computers running the software at your facility, okay, if you don't enable the time clock, then your people will not be able to use that as a clock in. This is one of the common ones that we see people calling in about, okay? I'll just do a save on that. The other area that's fairly important with the time clock is going to deal with the actual employees. Essentially, anybody that's going to use the time clock should be set up as an employee. Regardless, if they're going to use the time clock, they should be set up as an employee. Additionally, security should be set up. Now, this is twofold. So I want to take you briefly out because some of you earlier users may not have had this option. And I'm going to take you back in here to security for just a second and explain that we have created security roles. Now, mine are a little crazy because this is the database I use for training and testing, but there is a technician role in your system. And what we want to make sure of for the earlier users, that under the technician, we have the technician view. If anybody wanted, this would be a real good thing to jot down because the technician view, again, was a feature that was added a couple of months ago, and in the early stages of the security, we didn't have that. So if you wanted to take a look at your technician permissions, make sure that it does have technician view underneath the work order setting. That's probably the most important one. So the technician will then have security rights to view the technician view, do the proper clock in and clock out. I will mention while I'm in security, if we have an example, a parts runner, a person that does deliveries or does shop cleanup, they do not require a security right to use the time clock. They do not require a security login to use it, or a security privilege to use the time clock. Anybody that can log in will have access to clock in and clock out of the time clock, even if it's just for attendance. Okay? So once you get your employee in, once you assign your security roles to the employees, then it's going to be in your best interest to come back to the employee record and append their security login to their employee record. And that's simply done by logging in, identifying the employee off of the security login user list, and appending that back. You'll notice this under the username. If there is not an entry under username, then what that means is there is not a security login appended to this employee. So this just keeps everything in sync. All the reporting will work right. All the time clock activity, reports and everything will work right. So enter an employee, set up the security if they're a technician or service advisor, and then append the security login back to the employee. The next item we want to look at are going to be what we call the time clock events. So still under setup, we locate time clock events. Time clock events in our database template will come with 2. We always ship our software with waiting on parts and waiting on authorization. I've added to my database no jobs available, and you can have as many time clock events as you would like. To add a time clock event, we simply select add. We give it a code. You can use whatever coding you want and give it a name. How about we do one for lunch hour? Now, this is where we get into the productivity and the exclusive scenarios. If I want to consider this time clock event productive, meaning time spent on this will go as productive time, then I leave the box checked. I don't really know that a lunch hour would be considered productive, so I'd probably want to uncheck productive. Exclusive is another option. And this is where we get into the scenario where the technician or employee can only be clocked into one item at a time. Usually this is the best thing because my example would be I can't be on lunch hour and working on a card. You'd want to track whichever one is more important to you. So I try to leave most all of these events exclusive, which means they can only clock into one of them. But these are your choices, folks, okay? So we've added one in here. We'll just go ahead and do a save on it. There are a couple of other settings under location, and then we go to time clock. There are two settings here. The first setting, do not show items on completed work. What this box means is, I'm going to take you back to work in progress. If I take any of my current jobs and move them to completed work, which should mean the job is done, then those jobs that are under completed work are not going to be available for the employee to clock into, assuming completed means all the work is done. Now, if a technician is clocked into a job and then you move it to completed, if a technician is logged into it, it is going to stay in the available or the active, it would be in the active category under the technician time clock. So this setting is again up to you. Personally, if I move my jobs to completed, I consider the technician to be done with them. The other button is do not clock out attendees automatically. This answers our poll question. Okay, if I have this box unchecked, anybody who did not clock out will be clocked out automatically at midnight. If I have the box checked, then you will see a guy worked 12 hours if they forgot to clock out. So this is what I use in my system. Of course, these choices are yours, but understand these two settings. The next item is going to be the scheduler employee hour. Okay, so under scheduler, we have the ability to take our employees and assign their working hours or available hours. So in my case, the technician that I've selected, Joe Wrench, we're closed on Saturdays and Sundays, and Joe's available hours are from 8 o'clock to 5 o'clock Monday through Friday. Okay, so all I do is assign those hours. This is going to come into play in a couple of areas. It comes into play on the scheduler, and it does have an effect on the time clock, which we'll show you when we get to the technician view. Let me just explain one of the nice features here is if you go in and enter one of these, so you just say start hours, end hours, then I have the ability to simply copy that entry and paste it back into these days. So you don't have to do each one, enter one, and then you can do a copy paste if the hours are consistent throughout the week, okay? All right, so those are our setup points. Let's just go back, do a quick review. So the workstation setup, enable or disable. Remember, workstation identifies each individual computer. The employee details and security login. All employees should be set up, all time clock users should be set up as an employee. All time clock users should be set up with security and login and password. Technicians should be set up with the technician security role, and append the employee security login to the employee detail. That completes the setup on the employee side. Time clock events, you can set up your own events. Productive will report as productive hours. Exclusive allows only one clock-in event. Location settings do not show completed items on completed work orders, and do not clock out attendees. And the last item is under the scheduler employee hours. You have the ability to enter the schedule, and you can even have, there is a monthly view down on the bottom, which I didn't show you, but I'm sure you will all be taking a look at that very soon. Okay, so there's our setup. These things are very important in order to getting the time clock working properly. Let's take a second for another quick poll question if we could. Okay, the poll question here is, do you use the technician view? 3 answers, yes, no, or I don't know what that is. Let's take a look. 41% of the group says yes, they do use it. 32% say no, and 26% say I don't know. So this is great. This is really good. So let's take a look. Okay, do you use the technician view? No, I don't really have an answer. I mean, you guys provided the answers, but let me just make this point. The technician view is a fairly new feature in the software that is designed for easy access viewing and time clock in, clock out for your production staff. If you haven't seen it, I think you're really going to enjoy this part. So let's dive out and take a look at the time clock from the technician view. Now, unfortunately, what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to do a log out and log in as a technician. Okay, so here I'm going to come back and log in, and I'm going to log in as Joe Wrench. So when the technician logs in, you're going to see things are going to look a little bit different depending on how you've set up the security. So when Joe logs in, notice his menu options are a little bit different. One of these options is going to give anybody the ability to do a clock in. So from the home ribbon on the technician view, no matter who's logged in, that it is accessible to any other employee to log into security. So that is available. So it isn't dedicated to Joe. It's available to other people from the home ribbon. Okay. Other things that are in here that we want to look at is going to be the work order, which then turns into the work in progress. Guys, take a note. This is the work in progress view for the technician, which is different than the work in progress view we were looking at a few minutes ago. Okay, let's take a look at some of the information on here. Okay, so what we have on this is a summary, again, across the top, okay, which identifies the active work order that this employee is clocked into. The time remaining is the technician hours. Remember, we just showed the technician or employee hours. Joe comes in at 8, leaves at 5. He's got 4.5 hours left today. The attendance clock in, Joe clocked in at 8:50 a.m. this morning. Okay, and I did that on purpose. I'm going to show you guys how to fix that. He's clocked in on work orders 3.6 hours. Okay, or excuse me, 3.6 hours with 2.8 hours clocked in. The invoices below in total have 11.2 hours. So far today, Joe is at 77% productivity and 25% efficiency. So you'll always have this little summary screen that comes across the top. Time clock options from the work in progress view are only going to be dedicated now to the employee being clocked in. So this is going to be different than the time clock function you see off the home ribbon. So on the work order ribbon, if I go to time clock, it knows it's Joe Wrench. Joe can clock out of attendance or clock into an event, and you guys see the event we just added. Remembering, if Joe clocks into an event, okay, the software is going to ask him, are you done with the work order or are you not done with the work order? So again, that's up to the technician, and now you see the active login is the lunch hour. So everything makes it real easy for the employee to now change the time clock activity. Okay, if we look down below on this for our time clock options, let's take this work order and open it up. When I open up the work order from the work in progress screen, just double click, or you can do an edit, whichever your choice is. Now it displays all the labor lines available or assigned to Joe Wrench. That comes up under my work meaning Joe. Joe has the ability to clock into the work order or clock into any individual labor lines on the work order. these are your choices again. If I clock on to the work order, see how easy it is? Puts the check mark. But now all I'm tracking is the time spent on this work order. If I wanted to clock into the time on the water pump, then I just click on the little time clock by the water pump, and now the system knows. So it's real easy for your technicians to maneuver back and forth with the time clock from this screen. Okay, so there are several options available here, but the main thing that we're after is the ease of using the time clock for your technicians from the technician view. Let me take you forward a little bit. All work. If I go to all work is going to identify all the jobs on this particular work order. Let me make a point. Notice the oil change. The oil change is showing up under all work, but if I go to my work, the oil change is not on here. That's because the oil change on this particular work order has been assigned to a different technician. Hence the name of the categories, my work. If I'm not assigned to the oil change on the work order, it's not going to show up on my work screen, but it is available to show up on the all work. On the all work screen, you don't have login, so this is really just designed for a reference point for the technician to know all the jobs on the work order. Okay. Also, we're able to see the parts that are on this work order, but the all work really just is a viewing screen. Another nice feature with the technician view is the technician has the ability to interact with the inspection screen. So these are the inspection screens that we're using. Wherever the technician wants, he can clock onto that inspection. And again, whenever they change their time clock, it's going to ask them to mark or do not mark as complete. And I'm hoping you guys all know how to use these screens. It's real easy. You just double click on the line item. Okay, suggest, required. We have the map program conditions built in. We can make any notes, and we can immediately add a service package from here. Okay, so very simply, it's just that easy to do. And of course, it'll add that service package identified with the little bundle. The deferred work tab identifies any deferred work from a previous visit. So the technician can see, well, geez, it's already had wiper blades recommended. The customer knows, and it's been deferred. You can see pricing, dates, work invoices that this came from. And one of my favorite features back here in addition to the time clock is the history tab. Your technician has the ability to go to the history tab for this Toyota Tundra. And I don't know if you guys know this, but by simply double clicking on either the work order or the check mark, what did we do to the brakes? That was done in 2014, invoice number 12. Just double click on the check mark. Okay, sorry guys, this dual monitor's starting to hurt me now, so let me see if I can drag this over. And it opens up that work order, okay? And if we look at the work order, we're going to then be able to see we did brake pads on the front, pads and rotors. So that's a direct hyperlink off of the history tab. So just double click either on the work order number or the invoice number, excuse me, and it opens up that invoice and we have the ability to see everything we need to see back here. Okay. So your tabs available on the technician view are history, which links to the invoice, any deferred work from previous visits, inspections, all work, and my work. So it's very simple to use, folks. Hopefully you'll take advantage of some of these features. Let's go back to the presentation and let's do a quick review. From the home ribbon on the technician view, it has the exact same features as the log on to time clock from the home ribbon on any other view, and it is available to all employees. We have the ability to log into work orders from the work in progress. Okay, so the time clock from the work order menu group only allows attendance or events. The daily summary, which is across the top of the technician view screen, shows the active items currently clocked into, work time remaining, Okay, and then the attendance clocked in, total, clocked, invoiced, productive, and efficiency. And then your time clock options. I didn't mention this, but any jobs that are marked as completed on the technician view will show up with a green shaded background. Select a work order by double-clicking or doing an edit. The work order summary is now at the top of that. Okay, select a time clock icon either at the top of the work order, which clocks you into the work order, or select the time clock icon by the labor line, which is then going to clock you into that labor line. And remember, exclusive. When you change your clock in, it's going to clock you out of the previous item. We talked about some of the other options available from the technician view, okay, which is going to be My Work, which displays all the work assigned to that particular technician. All Work, which displays all work, but there are no edits or entries available from the All Work tab. Inspections, where you can interact with the inspections, make entries for what your findings were, and even add service packages. The deferred work, no edits available. And then your history, which has the ability to drill down to the actual invoice detail. So hopefully you guys can take advantage of some of those. There's going to be some documents that go out from the help system, and you guys can also watch those and the videos associated with this.